Kelly, you can hear me?
Yes, I can hear you, Martin.
Just testing. I'd like to welcome you very much in a special way to this webinar, which is being hosted by the leadership group. You've just seen a short clip there on introduction to the leadership group and some of the work that we do and some of the people that we work with, our team, as well as some of our clients. My name is Martin Oduor-Otieno. I'm the founder and the CEO of the leadership group. As I've said, welcome very much and thank you for joining us today. This webinar today is the second one we are hosting in 2021. We do have webinars scheduled for once every month around this time of the month, and we'll be sharing with you our calendar so that you can hopefully diarize each of those dates so that you don't miss out on any of our interesting conversations on a monthly basis. Last month, we had a webinar which was addressed by the Nairobi Securities Exchange CEO on the topic of outlook for 2020-21 investments and opportunities. And today I'm very delighted to welcome here my colleague and friend, Philip Thigo, who is going to be facilitating a discussion today around global leadership in the fourth industrial revolution. This is a topic that perhaps some of us just hear about. We don't understand it. Maybe we are already engaged with it, but when it is called fourth industrial revolution, we probably wonder what people are talking about, especially if you think about your days in school and what industrial revolution then was looking like in the days gone by. So I'm quite delighted myself and looking forward to learning from Philip, who is an expert here. I do also have a number of my colleagues on the board, the team from the leadership group, Kelly, Christabel, Kefa, Percy, and others of our associates who have joined us on this call today. I just want to, just taking 2 minutes ahead of the kicking off to just say that the leadership group which I run is celebrating 5 years. Actually did that in December last year, but we are using the whole of this year, 2021, to continue our celebrations, since last year, 2020, was a lost year in many respects because of COVID. So we're kind of saying, since we didn't celebrate enough last year, let's celebrate in 2021. And we've worked during this period over the last 5 or 6 years with the clients in a wide spectrum of industries across all sectors. We focus very much in the areas of coaching, executive coaching, leadership, corporate governance, working with boards of directors, in the area of advisory, which includes strategy development and strategy execution, communication and change management. And these are areas which we believe, which are both our core strengths, but we also believe that these are areas which deliver the highest impact for organizations. And so I'd like to invite you, in case any of this interests you, to get in touch with us at the leadership group, and we'll be sharing our contacts as at the end of this presentation. We have certainly worked with more than 40, 50 organizations over this period. We've worked with more than 200 people in the coaching space, leaders at the C-suite level, and we've worked with a number of boards of directors in the areas of board effectiveness, board evaluation, governance audits, and other areas that are of interest to boards of directors. And we'd like to thank those of you who are our clients and have worked with us in that respect. And we do hope that those of you who are attending this webinar for the first time, or who haven't engaged us on our other products and services, can actually do that in this year and be part of our celebration. We do have a comprehensive calendar of our events, which run up to December, a combination of webinars, half-day events, online events, 1 day, 2 day, 3 day programs. And again, you can get details of that from our calendar. Let me now, without taking any more time, knowing that we are running slightly behind schedule because we're still waiting for many of many of us to join. Let me introduce Philip, who is our chief guest today. You can see him on the screen. Philip is an expert on applied technology, public policy, and governance. He is the Senior Director for Africa for the Thunderbird School for Global Management. He's an advisor at the Presidency on Technology, Enabled Open Government, and Senior Consultant for UNDP on Africa, leading the Fourth Industrial Revolution. He was recognized by Apolitical as one of the world's 100 most influential people in digital government in 2008. He's a member of the World Economic Forum Global Futures Council and the Regional Action Group on Africa. He was recently appointed as a regional ambassador for the Global Blockchain Business Council for Sub-Saharan Africa. Mr. Thigo has had an illustrious career spanning civil society, public sector, and philanthropy, having worked in Asia, Sub-Saharan Africa, Middle East and North Africa, and Latin America to strengthen technology adoption and international cooperation, and in an advisory role at the Africa Union Commission Chairperson's Bureau and its governance architecture. Mr. Thigo has co-created technology initiatives such as Apps for Africa with the US State Department, Uchaguzi to monitor elections, budget tracking tool for fiscal transparency, and Sauti Yetu, Huduma for public service response. Mr. Thigo is a point of contact for open government partnerships, technical advisory group member for Digital Earth Africa, the first ever multi-stakeholder, continent-wide, AI-driven free and open Earth observations data. And I could go on, I suspect, with Philip's introduction, but Philip, if I've missed out anything, feel free to fill in. But welcome, and thank you very much for accepting to lead our discussion today on this very, very important subject. So over to you. We had set this webinar for about an hour. We still hope that we can do this within the hour, and just for managing our time, we will stop at exactly 1:45. So we have slightly less than an hour from now. So Philip, over to you.
Thank you so much, Martin, really for having us, let me say, as Thunderbird School in this call. Coincidentally, this year we're celebrating our 75th anniversary. So we have an old grandpa, as we say, who's looking at getting some insights and inspiration from a young organization that is very locally rooted, but also I think very much proficient around issues of leadership. So this is really a privilege for us. I think without further ado, I know the terms and jargons we used. Let me go quickly to my slide in terms of really saying, and I'll go straight to it. So and I'm sure that the leadership group will give those who are attending this webinar this deck. If you find something useful, please feel free to use it. So I think basically for us, when you talk about the fourth industrial revolution, as Martin has mentioned, there were three that were there before this fourth one. The fourth one is getting a lot of noise, maybe because of the context we are in. So the first one, of course, was steam. Second one was really much driven by electricity and mass production. The third was really ICTs and automation. And I think there's a lot of confusion around this. So ICT really was a product of the third industrial revolution. The fourth industrial revolution, which is this term we are using, is a fusion of everything. The physical, the digital, and the biological spheres. And we see this a lot. And I always move people to wearable technologies. You're wearing a watch that is measuring your heartbeat, which means that somehow a technology is interacting with you as a biological organism, and then being able to sort of send data to a platform somewhere that then can be interpreted and can be crunched within a machine. And we're seeing a lot of that happening. And that's just on the technology front. So I think it shouldn't be confusing. It's simply how everything where we are right now is connected. Why is this important? I think the only difference between all the other revolutions is this is fast. And for me, I've been giving this talk for the last 4 or 5 years, but I think it's been easier in the last 1 year because of COVID-19 and how that has brought about technology adoption in a very fast way. And this is why we talk about disruption, because we've not been ready, and it's been disrupting how we plan do things. So definitely, this is how this revolution is marking itself. Of course, we've seen, unlike previous revolutions that were very much confined around the world of work, this one is really permeating on how we live, learn, work, and communicate. And it's reshaping basically everything. And for COVID-19, I think we've seen how remote working, learning from home, working from home has been an interesting context, but also just how those spaces have been blurred. What is driving this revolution? I think it's really been the digital trends and the wide adoption of how technology has been used. So in the last 1 year, and this is interesting, we've seen internet users growing by 7.3%. That's 316 million users in 12 months and contributing to about a total of 4.66 billion by January of this year. That means as much as a lot of us were not digitizing previously, COVID-19 with the differentiated lockdowns has moved us to understand potentially that this platform is important. Of course, we go to social media in terms of how people interact. And then of course we go into mobile telephony, which is primarily now the mode of engagement, especially on the online economy. Just in terms of numbers around the world, of course, we're seeing unique mobile users is at about 66% of the global population. Internet has jumped up to about 59% of the global population. And this is actually the core ages of 16 to 64, which is what we call the productive age, I think, in business. What are the trends of this revolution? And I'll quickly look at this. So we are hearing, and I know Martin has alluded to this, we are hearing this whole issue of digitization and data. We're hearing integration, and I know a lot of people in businesses, this is what you're hearing a lot of times. We're hearing smartization. Everything is becoming smart. We're hearing artificial intelligence, or a mixture between what will be a physical intelligence with artificial intelligence, being able to run smart systems even when we are asleep. We are hearing of virtualization. So all of you, I'm sure, we are doing this virtually right now. That's why I'm saying previously it would have been very hard to do this. We are hearing notions of being able to predict and being able to prescript. So this is basically, I think, the sort of underpinnings of this revolution. And because this is a leadership group talking about business, we have to connect this with the world of work. So the core of this is that we're operating in a world without borders. I'm sure there's some people in this call who are not necessarily from Kenya, and this is what is happening and engaging with us in Kenya. There's a notion of mobility. We are connecting to work. Previously, we probably would have had to hire a hotel room to do this. Now we simply need to connect. A lot of you are working from home. We are seeing new behaviors. We are living mostly our public lives online in real time and providing feedback. So for those of you, of course, who are on social media, KOT or Kenyans on Twitter will be one of your examples where anything that emerges, they're quickly able to engage with authority quite quickly. And we've seen what that has done over the last 3-4 years, including companies like CNN have been able to apologize over some comments that they made online, but being able to be held account by somebody who's not even in the US. We've seen this whole issue of technology, and that's really the driver of this, collaborative platforms, the Zoom, the Skype, WhatsApp, and we're seeing a lot of these things. But the core of this, I think, and this is something that is interesting for Kenya especially, is demography. We're increasingly a young population. We are seeing the workforce increasingly getting younger, and 75% of this workforce will be young by 2025. That tells you something in terms of trends. Kenya, one of the youngest countries in the world, our median age is 19.7, which tells you we are basically a digital economy. I wanted to show this kind of trends in terms of simply even borders being breached. Estonia has an e-residency program where anybody can run a business in Estonia online, pay taxes in Estonia online, and get paid even when they're in Kenya. We are seeing this Upwork where somebody like me has a day job, but then I have a side hustle. So in the Kenyan speak, the side hustle is something you're doing on the side, but now we have platforms like this, like I don't have to leave my home and I can do this in Upwork. Last time we checked, I think we had about 16,000 Kenyans on this platform. We are seeing co-working, the sort of in the asset light economy. So we're seeing co-working spaces that now are combined with working from home and people shedding off assets. So how does a leader start thinking through how organizations of the future will be? And that's why I think we keep on saying we are in a virtual new world, really, like virtually. And so this is something that I just wanted to flag, and this is a trend we're seeing. Twitter just announced that they told their employees they could work from home forever if they so wish. And this is the trend we're keeping on seeing, that companies are staggering employees and are thinking through how do they do that in future. And that brings an interesting point, that the current jobs as we see them, or the current organizations and we understand them, will decline in the form that they are right now. So we'll probably see a massive loss of jobs. We are seeing them being lost anyway, potentially because of COVID-19, but there's jobs that will never come back simply because of how the world of work, but also our technology and the fourth industrial revolution is changing. But the good thing is that we'll have, well, I wanted to give examples of this. We've seen how Airbnb has disrupted the hospitality industry without owning a single hotel, but being valued at $31 billion. We've seen Uber. We don't even know what it is anymore. Is it a taxi hailing company? Is it a food delivery service? But totally disrupted how mobility is organized. And I can mention Netflix disrupted how content is shared. IBM Watson, in industries that we thought would never be disrupted. We have this AI engine that now disrupts how medical and health services are provided, simply because you have a machine that actually can hear, read, talk, test, interpret, learn, recommend, but also look at posterity at a very fast pace. But then again, that's the opportunity. When you see these machines and all these technologies coming in, there are potentially new jobs that can be created, but also potentially new ways within which we need to organize our industries that are more, that must be a connection between machines and humans. And this is what we call exponential companies or exponential industries. We must think like that. A quick example is WhatsApp, which everybody is running right now on their phones, is run by 55 people, which tells you WhatsApp is already thinking, or Facebook is already thinking exponentially. Less people, but working in collaboration with machines. And that brings in a whole new set of skills, but also a whole new set of how we're going to manage these populations. Remember, losing 75, gaining 133. So I think as an industry leader, will you be in the 133 or will you be in the 75? And so some of these skills we wanted to bring in may not necessarily be technological, which are the hard skills. What we see with working from home, remote working, working differently, distributed teams, is we need other sets of skills. Creativity, critical thinking, social intelligence, different ways of communicate. We are seeing, because of the exponentiality, but also of the rapid pace of technology, we also need to start learning differently. So we are seeing lifelong learning, adopting a growth mindset, but also being comfortable with change and uncertainty, because these are uncertain times and chances are they're not going to change. And so this is the fear. This is something that people must think about, that the current work in Kenya, 52% of them can be automated as we speak right now. And so how do we ensure that we cushion those skills, but also upskill very quickly? And that's why we're saying 54% of the workforce may need significant reskilling in the next couple of years. And so what is leadership, I think, in this time, right? I think it's about empathy. And that's really the core message, I think, in my talk. And so if we're going to build a future-ready leader for a new kind of enterprise, it must be a combination of these types of skills, right? So being able to understand basic digital skills, being entrepreneurial in one way or another, being able to interpret data, being empathetic, but also having a global mindset, because what you do locally can quickly be disrupted globally. Being able to reach across borders, so silos must go, by thinking through how to collaborate, being able to be agile and thinking quite quickly on their feet, but also being a lifelong learner. Learning now does not end. And that's why we say we really need some learning agility. No longer, it needs to be a combination of deep domain expertise, which actually is a core of business, but also being able to combine with soft skills. And again, empathy really is at the core of this. And I think for me, as much as you think about the fourth industrial revolution, remember we said it is really a fusion of the cyber and the physical. The human cannot be lost. And if one thing we've noticed about this revolution, you can never replace the CEO or C-suite person with a machine. And this must be the locus then, a combination of a human context. And this is what we really must focus on, and less around skill sets. And with that, I thank you.
Thank you very much, Philip. That was a very quick run through this very big subject, Philip. So I'm sure that there's lots and lots of questions wanting you to answer or respond. And I'd like to encourage people to either post them or if you want to raise your hand so that you voice your comment or your question. At the moment, I'm seeing a thank you note from Zaina. Philip, thanks for that. So let me probably go first, Philip, and just ask you about, you know, the current leaders, the current people we have in leadership positions. What would you advise them? How would they got onto this fourth industrial revolution train, you know, the future of work, the kind of skills? You know, I come from an accounting and auditing background, and I've seen in one of your slides that this is one of the jobs which is going to disappear. And yet we are busy training accountants and auditors and all sorts of people who are listed on that slide of yours. So what should we be doing or thinking about right now as leaders, Philip? And how much time, what's the runway here like for us in this space?
I would say you have no time, but you have to start somewhere. And this is something that I'm telling people because remember, it is a revolution. So revolutions are often very chaotic. And chances are, as a revolution is happening, people are going to be displaced, worse off, dislocated. I would prefer to be displaced because I can do a couple of things to come back into the mainstream. The sense that I have always tell people, one is hire young people. There's always a fear of young people. They are the experts in this field because as much as we want to claim as academic institutions, I don't know anybody right now who can claim that they are providing degrees or masters or PhDs across the vastness of the fourth industrial revolution. It's not happening. Everybody has adopted a growth mindset. And so how do you learn quickly? How do you read widely? But I think for CEOs is how do you understand this is our context? I think there has to be a realization that this is going to be the new normal. So how do you re-engineer your business to be both virtual and physical? Those are the two pieces. The second piece of that would be then how do you then start to build contingencies around this new industry? And the third piece, I think, is how do you now rethink your investments? I see a lot of investments still in brick and mortar, office buildings, chairs, tables. Internet is the investment right now. Data is another investment. Skills is another investment. I think for me, those three are not leaving. Then for companies, and I'm talking about for companies and government, is about agile policy. At the C-suite or at the board level, understanding that policy making in the way that we're doing right now is in itself a problem because of how technology is moving. We will never catch up. So how do we evolve an agile policy making mindset so that policy does not stifle innovation, and we in a way that we're creating policies within companies or government in a way that enables innovation?
Thanks, Philip. There's a question here from Sarah and Derito. Thanks, Philip. We are now in the fourth industrial revolution. How will the fifth industrial revolution look like?
Sarah, I wish I had the answer for that. The problem is that this one is evolving so quickly that we don't even know. So I'll give you a case an example. That we are training people right now for jobs that don't exist. Right? So it's basically building an engine as we fly. So the only way, it's not about how it will look like. I think for me is, will you be future ready? So how do you future-proof yourself so that when the fifth shows up, you're actually ready to be in the fifth industrial revolution?
Philip, if I can just follow up on that question, actually, but how do leaders start? How do you actually start this this journey? I mean, if you look at you've said that a lot of this is happening around young people. If you look at sort of CEOs and C-suites today, they are not necessarily full of young people. And you talk about policy and mindset around innovation. So how would you advise that people, organizations who are thinking about this, or leaders thinking about this, what steps should they actually take so that they are not overtaken by events?
There's some qualities I mentioned when I talked about a future-ready leader. And I think for me, one of them is a growth mindset. Sometimes it's difficult to believe that expertise is with that 19-year-old. I think it's time to believe that 19-year-old is actually an expert in this field. That's why you see companies like Google and others have said, listen, we'll hire even people without degrees. Because ultimately, it's how these young people have been able to wield this technology, but also create businesses and opportunities for themselves. And I think for me, companies need to think that. I think the second piece is also to understand CEOs need to see the disruptions in their industry. I'll be very interesting to hear from a CEO in a hotel chain in Kenya who's actually studied Airbnb and the Airbnb model to understand the disruptions in their industry. I'd be super interested to see taxi companies who've actually tried to study Uber and those types of taxi hailing cabs rather than protest or complain, right? Because so there's, as a company, you need to find a way to, I mean, we talk about crisis management, we talk about this strategic planning. How do we transform that mindset to understand, to start to understand and I always say industries of the future. We must understand industries of the future. Start to plan, not just a strategic plan, but thinking about what will your industry look like in the next 5 to 10 years. Then how do you quickly recontour your business models to be able to attract talent? For me, that is the biggest piece. How do you attract talent that understand this revolution? As I said, CEOs will never be disrupted. But then if a CEO, as much as you'll never be disrupted, your industry can be disrupted. So how do you ensure that as a CEO, you provide leadership and understanding this new talent?
I can see another question is closely related to what you've answered, but maybe you can give it another spin. What can the private sector do to reskill the existing workforce practically? Policy depends on government, and across Africa, you know how that goes. That's a question from Ochieng.
So Ochieng, I will tell you for sure that this revolution is being led by private sector. A quick example for me, and I always love to give this example, is M-Pesa. Overused, but it's a practical one. Safaricom has this innovation ahead of its time. It's mobile payment. It's not within the monetary space, and Safaricom is not governed by the central bank. So central bank sits with Safaricom, create a sandbox with the communication authority, and watch this innovation. And then later, build policies around it. For me, that's the kind of thing we're looking at. So when I talk about agile governance, it's actually how do we co-create products and services collaboratively. And I know you're talking about governments, but governments that we are seeing that are leading in this have been able to implement these pieces. Rwanda is a very good case. Uganda, for those who may not know, is another case. Sierra Leone is another, Cape Verde. And the examples of this, that how governments have been able to collaborate with private sector to be able to incubate and move these businesses. Also because these countries are realizing that they also must start protecting their companies, because these companies are the ones that are putting them ahead in this revolution. We're seeing how, for example, country in the East is protecting its 5G, is protecting the company that is running 5G across the world. But then you can see the pushback that is coming from the US, Canada, and Europe in terms of that technology. So you can see even the terrain of conflict has shifted from our understanding of war to more or less in the virtual world, but basically around technologies that will run the fourth industrial revolution. So my sense is that it's not about policy. Again, that's why when I talked about agile minds, agile governance, but also growth mindset, was also looking at government, because ultimately they may also be disrupted.
And just following up on that, Philip, there's a question from Kelemen Tongi. How do we accelerate digital technology consumption in the public sector?
So I have experience in that, as Martin would know. And honestly, the problem I have with the public sector, and this is not wholesome, this is in some, the pockets that actually matter, I would say, do not necessarily want digitalization. And this is the honest truth. Because if you talk about, for example, the council that I'm in blockchain, it creates records that cannot be altered, but then it creates transparency. So when you talk about something that wants to create transparency and accountability, then I would tell you acceleration will be slowed down quite deliberately. And so I think for me, the other piece would be then, how do we increase agency of citizens? So it should be the other way around. Create an awareness that then citizens begin to demand governments to digitalize, because ultimately, and also private sector, because when you talk about the realm of contracts and tenders, that could be an interesting start, that private sector push for open contracting, also push for beneficial ownership, so that these types of information, and Kenya, I think, has moved along around beneficial ownership. So these types of information are up online for public scrutiny, so that you can create great transparency. So I would leave it there.
I see you don't want to get yourself in trouble, Philip. Let me, so Rosemary is asking a question here. So great presentation and insight. What are some of the key opportunities we can adopt in the fourth industrial revolution, and how can leadership address this? What are some of the key opportunities we can adopt?
I think it depends on context. And many times I always say Africa can lead in the fourth industrial revolution, because we don't have legacy infrastructure. We don't have, we don't have old infrastructure that we have to tear down. Our industries are not that old that we have to do serious reengineering. As I said, we're thinking about exponential companies. We are SME driven. So for me, those are the opportunities. The other piece is, of course, demography. We are young. So we have lots of these opportunities that we can move. We are nimble. I think there are many mechanisms right now on how you can quickly bootstrap and put up a company very quickly. There's a lot of opportunity for collaboration and deepening domain expertise. Because I think for me, that will be the future. Because right now, you may be a health worker who's not tech savvy, but then collaborate with an innovator who understands technology. The two of you are interesting mix, because then it means you can build quite a formidable product that has domain expertise, but also the capability of a young person who's agile and nimble around technology innovation.
Thanks, Philip. I can see one hand up. Ongoy, if you want to ask your question, just unmute yourself and voice it.
Thank you so much, Martin. So great presentation. I decided to ask out loud because I was typing very many words. So we've talked about the opportunities, but I want to also look at the challenges that then can come with the fourth industrial revolution, right? So we're talking about upskilling and reskilling workers, but we're basically looking at it from the people who are already in the workforce. And we're talking about a number of jobs that will then be made obsolete, and especially if you're talking about from an automation perspective, robotics, etc. So wouldn't that then widen the poverty gap or unemployment? And what can we then do to mitigate that so that we're not only upskilling, but we're looking at, you said the median age is 19, right? So those 19-year-olds, as they're getting out of high school, how can we then start skilling them? It's not upskilling or reskilling, it's just skilling them to be ready to join in that.
Thank you so much, Wangoi, for that question. If you see the skilling and upskilling bit for us, we've really focused on existing jobs, or jobs that could quickly be automated, or jobs that could look differently if automated. And so that's what we've seen as an opportunity, right? So 75 will go, 133 new ones will leave. So for me, for leaders, is how do you create a skilling plan? For now, I think for COVID-19, we are talking about a workforce recovery. How do you create a workforce recovery plan so that you transition your employees from pre-March 11 for Kenya 2020 to now, in terms of this online, offline kind of work? The second piece is, I mentioned new jobs are being created. Before, we never knew a social media influencer would be a job, right? A social media influencer right now earns tons of money. Corporations prefer to advertise through an influencer than a traditional advertising company. So we're seeing a lot of these new jobs that are coming that do not require any education. Let me just be clear. So it means we can find a lot of opportunities online. But the problem, and you're right, is that, and I said this, being disrupted, you can be skilled and upskilled. Being dislocated is a problem. And for me, I worry about the dislocation where there's no comeback. Like, once you are gone, you're gone. You will never, you cannot be upskilled. And I worry a lot for the older ones like us, right? Plus 45, plus 50. Because then we're just not taught as digital. So there's a bias that is emerging. Of course, there are risks. I didn't want to, well, I can mention them now, issues of data security, issues of, so there's kind of a new terrain that is emerging. I think this is where we need some consciousness around how do governments create now inclusive policies. I really frame my context always around the SDGs. How do we look at the Sustainable Development Goals from a digital lens or a technology perspective, so that we leave no one behind and end extreme poverty, which means we need to co-create initiatives that recognize we're in a technology-enhanced world. So how do we then create everything that we do with that consciousness? Yes, you have a physical world, but then how do you ensure that we don't have a translation of what we see in the physical world manifest itself in the digital world? As you see, it's a work in progress, and some of us are trying to kind of address that, but consciously.
Thanks, Philip. Stanley Mutua, and Stanley, if you want to voice your question, I would actually appreciate. You've said, how does the spirit and culture of retiree freelancing affect both industry and companies? Philip, I don't know if you get that question, or if Stanley wishes to expound on that question before you respond to it. Stanley?
Thank you. As I listened to his presentation, which was great, he said that is one of the new norms, that people are not retiring to homes, but they are retiring to continue doing things. And so how does that then affect the industry or the organizations that they freelance on?
Well, there were not retirees, actually. I mentioned your workers are doing two jobs. You may just not know they're doing two jobs. They may be on the desk, but then they're registered on an online platform that provides jobs, and Kenyans are good at this. So your side hustle is actually happening in your main hustle. Before you kind of have to leave your coat, for those of us who understand where I'm coming from, and leave and do your side hustle and come back. But to touch on your, so I think that means you, as an industry, you have to rethink how you motivate your staff. So there has to be a different way of how now managers and CEOs look at their employees. Remember, also now they are working from home, so you're not there supervising them. But also, how do we change our culture of work based on outputs and deliverables. So there's a lot of strategic reengineering that we need to think through. Because you talked about retirees, I think for me, it's kind of an exciting thing. My French refresher teacher is a retiree in Japan. I found them online. So for me, then it could be interesting that if you are, it doesn't mean that if you're retired now you're redundant. It means you can use your skill that was a language coupled by a platform now that to earn extra income for other things. So for me, I think it's a good thing.
Thanks, Philip. There's a very short question here, Philip, from Mariam, which says, will insurance survive the future?
I think it is one of the companies that is being disrupted slightly, but then it's being improved because insurance is about risk. And the thing about having predictive analysis, it means you can right now price your products in a way that has some level of certainty. So for me, the fourth industrial revolution actually is an asset to the insurance industry. We are seeing, for example, in the automobile industry right now, simply by taking, you don't even need an agent to show up. Just take a photo. It has a timestamp. It has everything. You take a photo. It can even measure the distance of the whatever. We've seen cameras from the street. You can triangulate data, and being able by certainty to understand fault and how you price your risk or even how you pay.
Ochieng has got his hand up. If he can unmute and then ask his question.
Yeah, this one was going to be a bit long to type. Thank you, Martin. Philip, very interesting presentation. My question relates to the context. And I suspect that what is happening here is that there's a lot of first world concepts, if I can call it first world, concepts that are not directly translatable to the third world, if I can use that terminology. So for instance, we have M-Pesa, which is always given as a model of how the Kenyan digital economy is flying, and it's transformed the country, made transactions easier, and so on and so forth. But on the other hand, we have nightmarish traffic jams. We just don't have free-flowing traffic. So you can pay guys all you want by M-Pesa quickly, instantly, pay someone in Embakasi, but for him to get you whatever you want from Embakasi to Ruiru or wherever it is, you might struggle a bit. Of course, there's also borders and things like that. So what I'm saying is that it appears that the concepts are not directly translatable from one setting to another setting. And it looks like Africa might have quite a bit of a lag. I mean, another example is that it's taken forever. In the first world, the idea that you can stream video and therefore having video stores is a thing of the past. It has taken forever for it to get to Africa. I mean, in a lot of Africa, you still have video stores. That's an example of how the setting really defines what's going on. What are your thoughts on this?
Thank you so much. Okay, I think I'd like to differ with you on this one a bit. I think for me, it's not a technology issue. The technologies are there. Is I think a point that Mati, when I was responding about public policy, I was laughing a bit because I'm quite familiar with this challenge. So you mentioned traffic jam. At the moment, we have street cameras. Those things that blind you, right? The things that take photos. Those things are FOIA ready. You'll be very surprised, right? But then its application is mundane to one taking photos of your car registration. We could literally right now code a system that then enables those cameras to measure traffic so that it synchronizes with the street lights, so that it sends information to the police radios. I've seen the police radios. They are FOIA ready. Those things are just not analog. So for me, it's not about a first world, third world thing. And this is the beauty of the fourth industrial revolution. All these technologies are available to all of us. The problem is, how are they used, at what level, and what policies, and what is I always call imagination. What is our imagination? That we have the technology and we can harness it. For traffic, just quickly, Martin, there's a group of 2 ladies who have built something called rescue.io. These ladies, one American, I think one Russian, have come to Kenya in a span of 3 months, created an application using data from Uber movement, which they put out, working with our traffic policemen, our traffic light, created an ambulance platform, right? They don't have any ambulances. And right now, the response time on their platform for an ambulance is 15 minutes, agnostic of traffic in Kenya, right? So, and I can mention 100 of this. So again, for me, it's about imagination. And that was what I was saying. How do you skill and upskill? How do you have a growth mindset so that we can understand the technologies are here, but who uses them first, how we use them is important.
Thanks, Philip, and we can come back to that conversation. I see Mary and then Timothy. Mary?
Thanks all for the presentation. I'll take you back to public policy. And especially in Kenya, we see a lot of policies not being cohesive among different ministries, which impacts affecting any implementation of technology or digitization. So I just wanted to get your perspective on the impact of lack of policy cohesion among different ministries and public sectors on digitization currently, and even how it's being affected.
Thank you so much. I think for me, it's something that I keep on talking about, Mary. I think for me is, see, as I said, and I remember I paused on the piece where I said, unfortunately, people think we are still in the 3rd industrial revolution, which is about ICT. A lot of governments, and not only Kenya, they have this Ministry of ICT, right? So everything is driven from the understanding of ICT as an ICT thing, as a technology thing. What we are seeing now in the 4th industrial revolution is there's a fusion of everything. So this is not an ICT thing. The 4th industrial revolution is not about technology. It's about everything now is underpinned by technology. So it's not really about an ICT policy. Even as a company, it's about a growth policy. It's about your policy that understands you must harness technology, not ICT, for your delivery, how you, as we said, how you live, how you learn, how you work, how you communicate, how you engage, how you teach. And that for me has been the problem. The mind is stuck to this silo of ICT and not necessarily technology, and how technology permeates every day of our life. If I had a choice, and we've seen examples in countries like Niger, there's no Ministry of ICT, it doesn't exist. It's something that cuts across everywhere. And then there's somebody at the presidency driving it.
I mean, that's a really powerful, simple but powerful statement you've made there, Philip. Certainly for me, the fact that we are stuck in this ICT mode, and yet ICT is just the underpinning, but actually what you're doing is this growth mindset and the business modeling, but being underpinned by ICT. I think that's a really powerful statement there. Thank you. I see Timothy has got his hand up. Tim?
Yeah, all right, yeah. Thank you, Martin, and a great presentation, Philip. Just wanted to lend my voice into these subjects. I operate in that space of the 4th industrial revolution, and I think when I had the comment about the previous participant asking about the relevance of these technologies in our context, I think just to make it aware that, yes, as Philip was saying, these technologies do exist. We've been working in this space for the last 4 years, bringing a lot of these technologies back to suit our context. And one of the things that we do experience is the mindset barrier. Yeah, we have those biases, such as the one which was presented by the previous question, where we tend to perceive that there's no relevance of such technologies in our context. And perhaps that's where even Martin will come in as a leadership coach. I am a certified coach as well, and one of the things I can guarantee you is that we spend more time with businesses trying to change their mindset than even doing the work itself. So it's a collective responsibility to ensure that as leaders, you're able to bring your teams to speed. Perhaps just spending more time for them to see why this is really a reality, at this moment in time, we are talking about COVID accelerated digital disruptions. So we're seeing the statistics that Philip was displaying there about the emerging trends. Those are actually realities, and we're going to have a lot of this in the coming future. So I think that's what I wanted to contribute at this juncture. But thanks for this initiative.
Thank you very much, Timothy, for that comment. Yeah, I mean, we are coming up to our original end time, which is 1:30. Do we have a final comment or question before I ask Philip to kind of just wrap it up and give us his closing statement, and then we'll say thank you and we can leave. Wycliffe Osoro, I see your hand is up and you're clapping as well.
Hi, great. Thanks, Martin, for this opportunity. Thanks, Philip. I think I did listen to this presentation through Philip probably a year and a half ago. He remembers that. And it's interesting to see a lot of this now coming to life. And I think just a comment, I think when he's making the presentation and we're asking, how are we going to transition into it? And I think I play back to a number of years back when, say, we had the copy typists. If at that time you were told that there were not going to be copy typists after, 5 or 10 years, you would have said absolutely no. So I think the same thing that Philip is saying, in a number of years, some of these jobs are not going to exist, and we're still stuck in the mindset that they will exist. And if you don't change, then change will change you. So I think it's just good to embrace it and really focus on the mindset side of it, that it's going to happen. The disruption is really for the good, and there's going to be greater opportunities that are going to come. So it's just interesting to just play back and look at. And it's not just only copy typists. There's a lot of professions that existed a short while ago, what seemed like a short while ago, and they're no longer there. But the acceleration is going to be much faster. So it's not going to take the cycle that was there previously, and it's going to be much faster. But thanks a lot, Philip, and it's great interacting with you again.
Wycliffe, now that you are on the floor, I do know that you are an HR practitioner. Could you just give a comment from that perspective? What is the HR profession doing to actually take us forward in this agenda? I see Philip is laughing.
No. I think the HR profession, and I speak, one, you talked about the talent and ensuring that we have the right people. So I think forward-looking and forward-thinking HR professionals are thinking out of the box now. No longer do we start saying you require X degree, you require certain qualifications to do certain jobs. So that mindset shift is happening already. In terms of, and I know this when I was involved at the Institute, that a lot of the discussions that we were having, and that tells you that, in fact, the last conversation we had with Philippe was at our HR conference, which means that we're already thinking, what does this disruption mean for our industry? So in terms of selection, in terms of using of technology to do a lot of the things that traditionally would be done by HR people, but then also appreciating that we also need to upskill ourselves, because in the near future, we may not have HR as we know it. So HR is going to be totally different from what it is right now. So, and I think the disruption, displacement versus dislocation is going to be very appropriate to HR professionals, because if we don't move, we'll end up being dislocated, and probably there'll be no HR at all, because a lot of those things can be done through technology. Finding out whether your people are engaged, finding out a lot of those things can actually happen through what is happening in the fourth industrial revolution. But I think it will be interesting to hear what Philippe has to say about, I had him laughing quite loudly when we talk about HR and its effect in the fourth industrial revolution. Yeah.
Philippe, a quick response there, and then we shall wrap up.
It's because it was a conference of 1,000 of his colleagues, and they were shocked, right? And so that's why I'm laughing, because and I'll repeat this. that HR people must now really know how to manage people and machines. That's a fact, right? You must know how to manage people and how to manage machines. Sounds very strange, but that's the future. Because people will be working with machines. How you do that, we have to figure out as we go forward. But I think the second piece that HR, and I say is important, is because HR determines how we hire, the talents that we bring into organizations. So how does HR, especially in public sector, when you're thinking about a technology position, you're not looking at an ICT, and really this is why I'm laughing, because they're the ones who come with the job descriptions. You end up with an ICT person, ICTs from here to there, you end up with a networking person. How do you simply even rethink how we do job descriptions so that we are hiring talent that is fit for this revolution? You can be a doctor, but can you be technology enabled? Can that be in the job description? Can we have a data scientist? And I know Timothy will agree with me on this. That title doesn't exist in many places that I understand. And yet data is key to how you make decisions, but also how you grow your companies going forward.
Thank you very much, Philip. Thank you all. We're coming to the close of this. And Philip, may I just invite you to make your closing remarks?
Well, I think for me, thank you so much again for inviting me to talk in this conversation. And I think it's important for C-suite and business leaders, again, to understand that this is not an ICT issue, it's not a technology issue, it's a business issue. And so how do you mainstream technological adoption across your enterprise? I think for me, that's one. Two is how do you then ensure that you have a growth mindset, and a mindset that understands the future as it is work as it is has changed. So I don't want to talk about the future of work anymore. In fact, I flip that and talk about work of the future. It's no longer a future of work. The future is here. So now we need to rethink how work of the future will look like, and how do we provision for that. The third piece, I think for me, and I'm going back to this, is empathy, really. We are talking, and this is why you see even in this conversation, we are still mindful that people are being disrupted, dislocated, and they will continue to be disrupted and dislocated. But how are we empathetic to the needs of both our colleagues, but also our clients and partners, so that we ensure that we leave no one behind in this revolution? And I think finally for me, it again boils down to leadership. So there's a lot of weight and sort of currency I'm placing around industry leaders in a way that they need to help us shape this revolution in a way that is more inclusive. Thank you, Martin.
Philip, thank you very, very much for this really insightful, great presentation, eye-opening for a number of us, challenging, bringing us to reality on some of the things that you've said, and also just saying the future is here now, and therefore we've got to begin thinking about this and doing things that we need to do as leadership in our respective organizations, and of course continuing to learn, because learning never ends. And I think part of this work of the future is continuous learning, Philip. Just otherwise we all get left behind. I'd like to thank all of you for coming in to join us today for this webinar. As I mentioned at the outset, the leadership group does run monthly webinars. They're short, just about an hour, but we believe that they're impactful and very relevant for where we are on different subjects, but ultimately dovetailing into the space of leadership. So our next webinar is going to be on the 8th of April from 10 to 11. And we will be circulating the flyers and the topics and the speakers appropriately to all of you. And do take, if you are interested in joining us, which I hope you will be, please feel free to register for those. Kelly has also put on the chat box our contacts, our calendar of events for 2021. You can download that so that you can make reference to it. There are a number of other documents that she has also posted up there as well. So feel free to download those and take them with yourselves, and so that we can become this community of learners as we go forward. So I'd like to stop there. I promised that would end before 1:45. It's coming to 1:40 now. And once again, thank you all very much. Have a great afternoon. Stay safe. The COVID numbers have started going up. So I'd just like to ask all of us to be mindful of that and respect all the protocols and stay safe so that we can see you in one piece next time. Philip, once again, thank you very much. And bye-bye, everybody. Thanks, Kelly. Thanks, Christabel, for your support. Thank you. Bye-bye.